So let's talk about youth culture for a minute, because youth culture is the dominant culture at this point. They are who everyone refers to for what's in, what's cool, how to be, how to act, what to wear, everything from the cool social media to the weird food to eat, like all of it. And they're out there and they're dominant and they're prevalent and we see them every single day. Did you know that adolescence was not a thing before 1900? It was not recognized. I think it was like 1904. I'm forgetting who coined it, but 1904, the term adolescent was first used, and it was used to describe youth between ages of 14 and 16 and a half. And if you think about it, back in that time frame, that made a lot of sense. By the time you were 16, you were done with school, because they didn't have school past 10th grade. You were done with school, you were likely engaged, you were likely getting married soon, and you were going to be on your own. Since then, that has changed substantially, as we all know, and as many people complain about nowadays. In the and I could be off a little bit on my dating, but in the 1970s, I think it was, when adolescents moved from 13 to 18, basically your middle school, high school years. It was noted with the sort of primary teenage angst, those sorts of things. And now, actually, adolescence is from age about 10 to about 30. And that is based on when young people are completely self-sufficient. So by the time they are 30, most people on average are self-sufficient. Granted, many are fully self-sufficient prior to that. Many are fully, whatever you call it, adulting by 22, 23, 24 years old. But then there are others who are still living at home with their parents, who are under a mountain of student debt, who are, working to get their career established and are just taking things slower. And it's funny because youth culture really is the dominant culture. If you take a minute and you think about it, we are inundated with youth culture. If you scroll your Facebook, if you jump on Instagram, if you and you'll see older people. For example, I just got TikTok. I have not made a TikTok. I don't know that I'll ever make a TikTok, but that's what the kids are using now. And for me, I'm a youth leader with my church, and so I am around adolescents a lot. And I need to be in touch with them. I need to know what they're doing. I have children that are teenagers. I need to know what they're doing. I have no idea what I'm doing on TikTok. But you know what? Some of the older people are on there. I'm following Bob Saget. I don't know why. He popped up on a video when my daughter was showing me how to use TikTok, and so I clicked follow. He's an old man. I mean, relatively speaking. But he's definitely not of the youth generation. But you know what? He's keeping himself relevant by understanding sort of what the youth are buying into these days. And so I think that's super important. And I think that's super important for many reasons. I hear so many people complain about millennials. And I'm going to be honest, I complain about millennials too. But I think I need to stop. I don't do it a lot, but I hear people say, oh, the millennials, they're so lazy, they're so entitled, they're so this, they're so that. Guess what? We created that. We created that. And we created that because for whatever reason, we felt like our children needed and deserved more than we had. And I think every parent feels that. But there comes a point where you give your child so much, or that you were giving, like, where does it end? So I think part of what has happened is that, and why adolescence has expanded, is that our focus has been on education, giving our kids magical childhoods, giving them all the experiences that they need, that they deserve, that they want. And that's not a bad thing. It just extends childhood, which again, isn't really a bad thing. You know, they're not learning how to balance a checkbook and how to create a budget and how to pay their bills and how to, all of these things. Plan meals, grocery shop, change a tire, all that stuff. They're not learning that as young teenagers anymore. They are learning that into their 20s as they're sort of being forced to do it, but they're still under the support of loving, caring adults who are full-time adulting. And that's okay. I mean, I don't see why we have to push them to have all of the skills by the time they're 18, 19, 20. I do think we should be exposing kids to more life skills at a younger age. I don't think that they have to be forced if it's not a necessity. I do think for a period of time, we put a huge emphasis on formal higher education, and I think we're paying for that now. We're seeing fewer and fewer people going into the trades or that hard physical labor, which is sad because, number one, the trades pay really well. So you're getting a really good job with minimal formal education in terms of student debt, in terms of time and commitment. So I think we need to kind of reverse there a little bit. But I also think, you know, it's not so much that they need to have this stuff by the time they graduate high school. It's that they need to be exposed to it. You know, and it seems like the millennials are pushing for a kinder, gentler world. Tell me something wrong about that. Tell me why that's not an okay thing. Do we want our kids to be wilting flowers? Absolutely not. Do we want them to understand that there are awful things in this world, there are awful things that happen in this world, and there are awful people in this world, and that you don't always get a trophy, and that you don't always win, and failure is a part of life? Yes, we want them to know that and to get that. But there is an entire generation pushing for individuality, pushing for belonging regardless of who they are, pushing for creativity and doing what they love, what gives them purpose, what gives them motivation, not just wanting to do some 9-to-5 job. And I think we need to help kids kind of discover what those things are and how they can use those abilities in their world. That doesn't mean we're not going to have car mechanics. That doesn't mean we're not going to have electricians or plumbers or lobstermen. There are people out there who want to do that and who are going to do that. But there are also kids who want to start their own organizations, who want to work for nonprofits, who want to serve underprivileged individuals, and, you know, in so many different and creative ways. In the next, I heard a statistic, and again, I don't think I'm completely accurate on this, but the point is there. In the next 10 years, there's going to be 80,000 jobs that we've never even heard of, that don't even exist right now. That's amazing. The world is not going to collapse. The world is not going to fall apart because people want kindness, acceptance, belonging. They're not. They're doing good work by by having those things. So I think we need to, as the older generations, and I mean like Gen Xers, which is me, I guess I'm kind of in between that Gen X and millennial, like that in between generation, but there's like a micro generation from like 1978 to like 1983 or something like that, where we had an analog childhood and a digital teenage into adulthood. So anyway, I think that my generation and older needs to start considering that the youth generation is powerful, and we're going to be left as irrelevant if we don't keep up with what they're trying to accomplish. We don't have to agree with all of it, but embracing some of the concepts is only going to do us well. It's a pretty fascinating time if you really, really want to think about it. And I'm kind of excited to see how it all turns out. It could all blow up in our faces. It could, but it could turn out really, really awesome. And I have a lot of faith that it's going to turn out really, really awesome. Because, you know, I live with teenagers. I work with teenagers. I'm with teenagers quite frequently. And they're amazing people. And if they have the time and the ability to figure all this stuff out and change this world, we're going to be doing pretty well. The world is changing, folks. It is not the same place it was 100 years ago. We need to embrace it. And we need to let the youth of this country grab onto that creativity and run. They know how it all works. They know the technology. They know how to reach people. They know how to get out there. So let's see what happens. Let's take a minute, and instead of complaining about what they don't know, embrace what they do know and what they can offer and what they can teach us. And in turn, maybe they won't be so defensive, and they'll want to learn what we have to offer. Kind of goes both ways. All right, just my thoughts for the day. Bye.